Chapter 8. Message of the Sixth Day. I do not know how I did it, but I managed to escape my siblings and go to my meetings with Elianin. It was however difficult to leave little Henriette, my youngest sister, behind. She was very attached to me and had entered into the habit of following me around, even sleeping in my bed. She was 12 years old that year. I had to fool her into going and looking for a non-existent book in my bedroom, telling her not to come back without it. And while she was gone, I slipped away. Of course I met Elianin and was given the message of the sixth day. And it went like this. Greetings. By now you are familiar with the stories of your Bible, and you can understand what was meant in those old stories. Many times we had to use our spacecrafts and seagoing vessels to help our prophets on Earth in their travels and in many other situations. Thus we used one of our submarines to rescue Jonah in the sea. Another time when we had to introduce our new technology to one of our human messengers is recounted in the Book of Mormon, in the story of the brother of Jared about how we helped him to travel to what is now the American continent. He was one of the scientists we had to remove from Babel. He was one of those who had been involved in building that rocket, or tower as it is called in the Bible. His name is not mentioned because our leader had decreed that nobody on earth should even utter their names, after their treason. But he was a good man who had been misled, and our leader had deemed him worth saving, because he immediately repented when he understood that he had been duped and lied to by the renegades. He was given a compass, and was taught how to build submersible ships in which he and the people with him were able to travel through the Mediterranean Sea, and across the Atlantic Ocean. We recommend people to read the early part of the Book of Mormon to acquaint themselves with his story. But we also recommend caution, on account of the interpretations that were subsequently made of those writings afterwards. Today we shall continue and tell you about Yeshua, the Messiah of Nazareth, and soon, our meetings shall come to an end, so pay extreme attention to what we are about to tell you. And when you write your book, write this message faithfully, leaving nothing out, because we do not wish to come back and repeat what we have been telling you for at least another 1,000 years. We will be quoting many books and scriptures, all written by human beings, some of which can be checked and consulted as needs be. The times when Yeshua, or Jesus as he is commonly known, and his cousin John the Baptizer were born, were times when most of the Jewish people were acquainted with the mysteries and when all religious people sought to realize their divinities. Men and women alike were eager to learn. In those days, there were many Essene communities, but in Palestine there were 3 main groups. One of them was composed of people, men and women who had chosen to live a life of celibacy and to dedicate themselves only to spiritual pursuits. Of the other 2 groups, one was dedicated to not only their own spiritual researches, but to also instruct people and children of both sexes, who came to them from surrounding villages and countries, regardless of their faiths, and who wished to learn from them and to actively seek their divine realization in the Essene way. Many of those students usually left at the end of their studies, and went back to live with their people. The rest chose to stay with their teachers, and live permanently with them. The last main community was composed of families of Essenes. Couples that had met at the second community, who had married, but had not wanted to return to their original villages and countries. Instead they had preferred to set up their own village, made up of people who practiced the same religious rituals, and who had the same divine aims as themselves. Joseph and Miriam, Yeshua's parents and their original families, lived in this third community. As well as being practicing Essenes, they were all members of the Pharisee sect, one of the existing branches at that time of Judaism, their religion. Joseph was even one of the rabbis who lead their synagogue, so was Miriam's father, who was called Jehoiachim. Both were Essene adepts, deeply versed in the mysteries. And so was Miriam's mother, Hannah. Miriam also began being trained by her parents as soon as she could talk, and by the age of 8, she was used to regular angelic communions. That is also when her father died, and she was an only child. Miriam's name was later changed to Mary, by the Romans. Joseph was a middle-aged widower with grown-up sons. After Miriam's father died, her mother went to see Joseph and asked him to take Miriam for wife. It was an offer that Joseph accepted eagerly. As the mother's health was poor, She asked for the betrothal to be celebrated immediately after that. Then she died when Miriam was still 12 years old, but just weeks before her 13th birthday, soon after the engagement ceremony, which was performed by another one of their rabbis. Understand that this ceremony was valid as a marriage ceremony. It was then decided during a meeting of the elders that Miriam should go and live in Joseph's home, but that they should observe the traditional year of sexual abstinence, after which a more lavish religious wedding ceremony was to be performed. Then the marriage could be consummated. And 2 years passed, and Miriam was now 14.5 years old. Then during Joseph's ritual of prayer and fasting followed by the angelic communion, he was visited by Gabriel, a messenger from Yahweh. He told him that the first child that he was going to father with Miriam was going to be an astounding individual, because he was going to be one of those who transmigrated to earth with their divine and mental abilities intact. And of course Joseph called him the messenger of God. Joseph did not waste time, and the following day, he went and told Miriam about the visitation, telling her that they should consummate the marriage immediately and not wait for the official wedding feast that they intended to throw. Miriam was understandably afraid and disturbed, as she expected the lavish wedding ceremony that had been planned to take place first. And it was only after she performed her own ritual and received the visit of the same messenger that she agreed to consummate the marriage. And that is how it happened, not the other way round. Joseph was definitely the father of Yeshua. Understand, however, that the messenger never told Joseph and Miriam to break Moses' law. But truly, Moses' law had not been broken, since it was a whole 2 years after the betrothal ceremony. But Joseph was a much older man. His fiancée was very young and beautiful, therefore he was only directed by his carnal desire for the young virgin lady. He simply could not wait for the wedding feast. It was after this carnal union that the boy was conceived. And could it be punishable by death, since the child was fathered by the man who was her fiancé and to whom she was already traditionally married? Most people at that time could not afford 2 ceremonies, that is, the engagement, and another proper wedding feast where a lot more people were invited. If a couple was poor, just the engagement ceremony was sufficient, and in the eyes of all, they were married. Miriam did love Joseph. In their time, someone who had knowledge of the law and the mysteries was very much desirable as a husband. Also he was rich and very much the father figure that was lacking in her young life. He was also handsome and a descendant of King David, and as such he was a member of her ethnic group, which was the tribe of Judah. So that part about Joseph musing over sending her away, or the threat of her being stoned to death, simply never occurred. It was an invention concocted by the Romans, to introduce their virgin, non-carnal conception story. The prophecy concerning a virgin and a baby is in the book of Isaiah in your Bible. But that word virgin was written to mean a young woman or a maiden in the original Hebrew language in which the scriptures were written. And while it said that a maiden shall conceive, it does not stipulate that she should still be or remain a virgin at the time of her child's conception, or throughout the pregnancy, or that the baby would be conceived without any carnal union, or without any biological human father. And even so, in the case of Miriam, she was indeed a virgin before she and Joseph consummated their marriage. Therefore stories that Miriam never had any sexual intercourse with anyone and was still a virgin at the time when she was pregnant, when she gave birth, and even when she died are nothing but an invention of the Romans. And that story of Yeshua's conception as found in the New Testament is therefore a Roman fabrication. Also, if the young man from France comes to you and tells you that Mary had been impregnated by his Elohim, you must not believe him, he is a liar. We have already told you that it was strictly forbidden for a lionin and for the watchers to mate with humans. That law has never been changed. Therefore, if anyone comes and tells you differently, and then claims that he was sent by our leader Yahweh, he should not be believed, he is a liar. Also, any stories of Mary having been impregnated by the angel Gabriel are simply not true. But we have to add that Miriam was visited twice after becoming pregnant, by one of our medical teams. But only to ensure that the child was developing normally and that there were no complications with the pregnancy. Because in those times, pregnant women did not have the necessary monthly antenatal care services provided on Earth now. Also, a particular surgery was performed on him to enhance and improve his former life's retentive memory abilities. However, a wedding feast was eventually held, since Joseph was a wealthy prince with a large extended family, as was Miriam's, and the elders were informed by Miriam herself that she was already pregnant. When the elders argued that they should have waited for the wedding feast, Joseph said that he was the one who had made her pregnant, and there had been no need to wait, since they were already married. In fact, the whole discussion was held amid howls of laughter. Therefore, the Romans simply twisted the story here to suit their purposes. Another thing we want to briefly comment on for the purpose of your book is the month of Yeshua's birth. Contrary to what has now become known all over earth, Yeshua was not born in the month of December. He was born 10 days before the day of the Hebrew Passover festival, as we shall demonstrate to you later. The person that was born during the month of December was his fellow Essene and relative, who later became known as John the Baptizer, Baptist. Proof of that can still be found in some of the books of the New Testament. Also, we shall enlighten humanity about that star that was supposed to have led the 3 wise men to Bethlehem. As many of your scientists and astronomers can now prove, it was of course not a star that had led them. There were actually 3 space vessels that guided them. They had been met by our messengers, who had been sent to fly them to where the child was. But they had all been afraid and had refused to climb into the space vessels. That is why the messengers had been forced to simply guide them on their way, with a spotlight from the vessels. You must understand that we never force people to come with us in our vessels. Only, sometimes our human messengers would get into our vessels after being invited. Then out of fear they panic, and try to flee, without realizing that they had a choice to come with us or not to come. Only after would we realize that they had been very frightened, after they had written, or talked about it. After the 3 wise men, who were adepts in the mysteries, had been individually met by us, they traveled together and were led by just one space vessel, that later positioned itself above the right stable, to show them where the baby Yeshua was. The next thing we want to comment on is the story about Jesus' transfiguration, and his ascension to heaven. As I think we have already told you, a lot of the biblical stories are incomplete. And those of the part of your Bible called the New Testament are very heavily falsified. The original writings of Yeshua's apostles were seized by the Romans. It was they who, when they decided to create a Roman state religion using Yeshua's name, ordered their scribes to change the accounts of the apostles, and write them anew to suit their own needs and to perpetuate their pagan beliefs. We urge everyone who deems themselves followers or would-be followers of Yeshua to wait for, and learn what we shall tell this, our young messenger, before they make their own minds. We therefore say that the events retold in the stories of the Transfiguration and Ascension occurred the same day. For a long time Yeshua tried to teach his followers about the mysteries, but it was very difficult for them to understand the very deep concepts he was discussing, seeing that a lot of them were simple and illiterate peasants. On many occasions he tried to tell them about the many meetings that Yahweh, our leader, regularly had with him in the mountains, and he also taught them about Elianan. And when he thought that they were ready, he brought Peter, John, and James, and another young Essene man, a Levite named Pinchas, with him, in order for them to witness one of those meetings with Yahweh, our leader. That Levite, by the way, was your ancestor Pinchas, Desiree. They witnessed Yeshua being taken up by levitation into one of our space vessels. Before Yeshua went up, he told them to go back to the village and come later that night to meet him. But when they saw this, they remained where they stood looking up toward the sky. One of our officers that had been left behind to watch them and be sure that they left, felt obliged to go and say to them, "Why are you standing here looking in the sky? Yeshua shall come back tonight the same way you saw him go. So do not worry and go home." That was the story of that famous ascension, and it definitely took place a long time before Yeshua died. Of course, those who have read that New Testament know how that story was told after it had passed into the hands of the Romans. Late that night Peter, John and James were back waiting for Yeshua, as he had commanded them. When the space vessel returned, Yeshua was levitated back to the ground accompanied by 2 space people or Elianan. The place where they stood was illuminated by a very bright light from the vessel, which was of course above and slightly behind Yeshua and the two Elianim. Unfortunately, the scene was too much for the primitive apostles. Yeshua had remained very long in his consultation with our leader. In fact, it was early morning when he returned, and by then the disciples had again fallen asleep. Peter concluded that the men with him were Moses and Elijah. He was terrified and became delirious, proposing to build altars for Yeshua, Moses and Elijah. It was then, while he spoke like that Yahweh, our leader, spoke from the space vessel, which is described in Luke 9:28-36 as a cloud. The end of Yeshua's story should be taken as it is in the book of Matthew, in which there is no question of ascension after death. But Desiree, since we know that your ancestor Pinchas left a very faithful account of his time with Yeshua, during his childhood and the whole length of his ministry, we shall leave you to write that account in a book, as it is a very accurate one. For now we shall continue with our message. The Mary-based Catholic religion that was created using the name of Jesus by the Roman emperors, and of its Christian offshoots, therefore has absolutely nothing to do with the faith of Yeshua, the Messiah that was crucified by those same Romans in Jerusalem. Most of the practices now found in Christianity were never performed or promulgated by Yeshua or his followers. He was a Jew, a synagogue and temple frequenting, kippah and talith wearing Hebrew who practiced a very tolerant form of Judaism. He never created a church, neither did he himself ever set a foot in one. As a matter of fact, churches never existed till more than 300 years after Yeshua died. Anyone truly willing to follow and emulate him should first wait for all the demystifying revelations that we shall verbally give to this, our little messenger, then read the account that was left by her ancestor, as she will give it later on, before they can continue. Because, as he said himself, everything he did, all people can do, and it is only through the mysteries that he and his ancestors before him had mastered, that it can be achieved. It cannot be achieved in any other way. That is done only after divine realization has been achieved. Not by kneeling before crosses and handmade idols, but by living as he lived, worshipping God as he worshipped and practicing what he himself practiced and preached, and most of all by realizing one's divinity. Christianity. After the temple had been destroyed in Jerusalem by the Romans, after all the Jews had been scattered abroad, being sold into slavery, and after most of Yeshua's true followers had been decimated, the religion that took over the world was the Roman Catholic Church. For Rome controlled most of the then civilized world as Earth's ruling empire. All Jews had been forcefully sent abroad, and none were allowed to set foot in Palestine again. About 230 years after Yohanan, or John, one of Yeshua's apostles, wrote his book of Revelations, the Roman Empire was virtually separated in two, one part in Europe, the other in the Middle East. Then their authority was constantly undermined by ferocious attacks by the many factions of revolutionaries that existed throughout the occupied territories at that time. Finally, the Roman Empire was reduced to being called the Byzantine Empire, after the city of Byzantium, which King Constantine made the empire's capital, and later named Constantinople, after himself. He then split this in two, by starting his own religion based on the Jewish faith, after having seized and confiscated most of the manuscripts kept in Jerusalem and other synagogues throughout Israel. He had also seized those written by Yeshua's apostles, and the ones the apostles had received from their own parents, with writings from the early prophets, as it had been customary. Which custom we encourage man of today to also take up, to discourage such falsifications as were done by the Romans, in future. As the Roman Empire declined, the Holy Papal Empire, hiding behind the name of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, rose out of its ruins. And that decline had begun from about year 185, ending with year 476 of the Christian era. The empire by then had had a population of 120 millions. Thanks to this papal empire, Rome continued to rule the world for a further 1,000 years. Constantine, an Ishtar, Apollo and Satan worshipper, had decided to create a Roman state religion. He had also been determined not to abandon his pagan practices. His church kept the original pagan worship of Ishtar that took place near the time when Yeshua was crucified, and the new worshippers were lied to, that it was to commemorate Jesus' death. The name of Ishtar was therefore modified and replaced by the innocent-sounding Easter, 400 years after Constantine's death. It was therefore the Roman Catholic Church, the world's religion, that brought Christianity to earth, and Christianity, no matter which sect it is the product of the Roman Catholic Church. Since, as humanity knows, the other groups began to be created when many nations protested and began to rebel against the Roman Church, after realizing that it was still the Roman Empire, only under a different name and in the guise of a religious denomination. But we want to tell humanity the truth, once and for all, and to help those who shall follow our messenger, this young lady to whom we are giving our latest message. Our leader Yahweh ordained a calendar that was supposed to be kept by all of humanity, and which we are pleased to say, is still being kept by the Jewish people of today. We shall recommend those who will belong to the new Essene group to do the same, but only in regards to the religious festivals, for their practices in the mysteries. By that we mean they should observe the Jewish religious festivals, not the Christians' ones. The calendar that was given is lunar-solar, and months are reckoned according to moon, years according to sun. So to reconcile lunar years, 354 days, with solar years, 365 days, 1 month is added to lunar years 7 times in 19 solar years. Leap years occur in the 3rd, 6th, 8th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th years of fixed cycle established in temple time. With 12 months in an ordinary year, and 13 months in a leap year, and months have 29 and 30 days. We give you these precisions on account of Yeshua's birth date, which was a leap year. And with these precisions, we repeat that Yeshua was not born in December. We will also prove it. Christmas is nothing but another Christian paganist festival that should not be observed by any follower of Yeshua. Although there is no indication whatsoever in that New Testament book that Jesus, or Yeshua, was born on December the 25th, people cite Matthew's passage in chapter 2 to 1-2 to justify Christmas, which they say is a celebration of the Savior's birthday. Humanity keeps this annually on December 25th, the time of the winter solstice, when the daylight portion is at its lowest, and the sun begins to come back a little longer each day afterwards. But nowhere in the Bible can it be found that Yeshua asked his disciples to celebrate his birthday, or that the apostles or any other of his future followers ever observed that particular birthday celebration. Neither is there recorded in the Bible that they kept such strange customs as cutting a Christmas tree, dressing it up and covering it in multicolored strings and garlands. Neither is there recorded that they kissed each other under a mistletoe sprig, cut and burned or baked Yuletide logs, or exchanged expensive gifts. No, they never did, because this festival was a pagan festival that went against Yeshua's faith, which was also their faith. It was against the law that Yahweh, our leader, gave to humanity. Let those of today who claim to be Yeshua's disciples follow his example. Yeshua, Jesus, and his disciples never kept Christmas, and none of his early followers kept it. It is wrong for you to do so, at least not in the name of Yeshua. You must follow the laws they followed, celebrate the same feast days as they celebrated, and thus return to the ancient path, as we Elianin do ourselves. It is perfectly acceptable to have a tradition of celebrating the lovely season of winter, with its white snows, especially for those who enjoy giving presents to their children, but that tradition should not at all be in the name of Yeshua. Therefore our followers, who shall worship with Desiree, should call the winter festival by the name of Noel, not Christmas. It is normal for all cultures to have customs and traditions, and since the Christmas tradition is now established, we say, let it continue. Children never like to be left out when others are enjoying something. And since Christian children have grown to expect presents at that time of the year, you must also make a point of dressing a tree and buying presents for your loved ones, and make that time of the year an occasion for family gathering and of exchanging presents. But do not do it to mark Yeshua's birth. His birth should be celebrated 10 days before the festival of Passover, which you should not omit to celebrate. We recommend you make it an occasion to enjoy giving more presents to your children. They will love it. Christmas is rooted in paganism and was a heathen celebration that was being kept centuries before the time of Yeshua. To claim that Jesus was born at that time is a lie. How can the pagan Christmas be his birthday if it was already being celebrated hundreds of years before he himself was born? However, the Jews at the time of Yeshua did have the habit of gathering together at that time of December, when the Romans celebrated their pagan festival. That was usually 2 or 3 weeks before the Roman Christmas Day. You see, the Romans usually eased off and sometimes even stopped their persecution of the Jewish people at the times of their festivals in order to concentrate on their orgies. This left the Jewish people with some respite. Thus they too profited to gather together and pray in peace without any fear of being disturbed, scattered or arrested by the Romans. And Yeshua followed this tradition with the rest of the Jewish people. Such a period, Hanukkah, is still observed today. If you want to have a religious festival in December, make it be known that that one is the one you are celebrating. Yeshua therefore was a devout Jew. His birth had been planned by Yahweh, our leader, all around the Jewish festivals and the Hebrew calendar, as we shall prove. So Jesus the Christian Christ has nothing in common with Rabbi Yeshua bar Joseph of Nazareth. The Hebrew calendar, as we just described to you, is what Yahweh gave to Moses, by which to calculate the feast days which were given in Leviticus 23. In Exodus 12:2 you may read, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, it shall be the first month of the year to you." And this is how we align and count earth time, according to the Hebrew calendar, or Yahweh's calendar. It is a lunar calendar. It should not be the solar calendar which the Romans forcefully imposed on humanity and which is now best known. In the Roman calendar, the new moon comes during all different days of the month. The winter solstice always comes at Christmas time. But in the Hebrew calendar, the new moon always marks the first day of the months, and the winter solstice comes in different days of the month. There are 365 days in the Roman calendar, with a leap year of 1 extra day every 4 years. There are 354 days in the Hebrew calendar, with whole extra months added to the leap years. Our feast days for us Elianan are celebrated on earth by the Hebrew calendar. For instance, Passover comes on the 14th day of the Hebrew month Abib. It can fall anywhere from March to April by the Roman calendar. It is not kept the same day every year by the Roman calendar. Now if even Yahweh, our leader, commanded humanity to celebrate Yeshua's birth, which he definitely did not, it would be kept according to the Hebrew calendar on which he was born, that it, no matter when it was, would always fall on different days according to the Roman calendar, because no Hebrew date falls on the same Roman calendar date every year. Even if Yeshua was born during the time in the Hebrew calendar, which would correspond with December 25th, the next year it would be on a different date to remain on the same Hebrew calendar date. But as we have said, there is a Hebrew festival that is celebrated early in the month of Kislev, around December. It is called Hanukkah. Therefore it is the will of God the Mighty One, and of Yahweh, our leader, that the festivals of God are not regulated by Gentile calendars, but by the calendar that he gave to Moses. Besides, the fact is that neither Yahweh nor Yeshua ever gave instructions to celebrate the birth of Yeshua as a holy day. There is also the fact that Yeshua was not born on or near December 25th. This can be proven from the Bible. In fact, even the true date when Yeshua was born can be proven from the Bible. The evidence. Let us begin with the time that the mother of Yeshua became pregnant. It is written in the New Testament. And in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from Elohim, Elianan, unto a city of Galilee, named Nazareth, to a maiden espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the maiden's name was Miriam. Luke 1:26-27. Now you must remember that this 6th month was according to the Hebrew calendar, not the Roman calendar, when our Gabriel appeared to Miriam. You shall notice what he told her in verse 3, "And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shalt call his name Yeshua." Miriam was to conceive Yeshua at this time. And the 6th month is Elul, and comes in correspondence with the Roman calendar August to September. Miriam wondered at this, as we read in verse 35. "And the angel answered and said to her, The Holy Spirit shall come upon thee, and the power of the Highest shall overshadow thee, therefore that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called Son of Elohim." So Gabriel was showing her that she would become pregnant with Yeshua during the 6th month, not some other month. How do we know this? Before the angel made this announcement to Miriam, Elizabeth had already been pregnant for 5 months. And after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived, and hid herself 5 months, saying, Thus hath YHWH dealt with me in those days wherein he looked on me to take away my reproach among men. Luke 1:24-25. So Elizabeth conceived John, and then hid away for 5 months. Then in the next verse, Gabriel came to Miriam, who had become pregnant during Elizabeth's 6th month of pregnancy. If Miriam became pregnant during that 6th month, she should have become pregnant after Elizabeth had been pregnant 5 complete months, and was her 6th month of pregnancy. And we find the proof in Gabriel's speech to Miriam, And behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath also conceived a son in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her who was called barren. Luke 1:36. In the 6th month, by the Hebrew calendar, when Gabriel came to Miriam to announce that she would conceive Yeshua, Elizabeth was in her 6th month of her pregnancy with John the Baptizer. Elizabeth conceived in the 1st month. If Miriam became pregnant with Yeshua in the 6th month, then she and Elizabeth would have been pregnant at the same time or about 3 months before John was born. Now in order for Yeshua to have been born on December 25th, Miriam would have had to have become pregnant about 9 months before December 25th, which would be the Roman month of March. This would correspond to the Hebrew month of Abib, which is the 1st month, the time when Elizabeth became pregnant. And that year, the Hebrew 1st month fell in March of the Roman year. If Miriam became pregnant in the 6th month, Yeshua would have been born 9 months later, in the spring. You should also remember that the Hebrew calendar has leap years, when an extra month is added, and if that year was a leap year, Miriam would have been pregnant. 1. The 6th month. 6. The 11th month. 2. The 7th month. 7. The 12th month. 3. The 8th month. 8. The extra 13th month. 4. The 9th month. 9. The 1st month. 5. The 10th month. The 1st month is Abib, which falls the following year, the month when the Passover comes, making it a total of 9 months. The only way for Miriam to have conceived Yeshua until March after Gabriel appeared to her, so he could be born on December 25th, would be that Miriam never became pregnant until after John the Baptizer was born. You shall remember that in that Hebrew 6th month, Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant, so John would have been born in her 9th month, which would be the Hebrew month of Kislev, the month when Hanukkah is celebrated, which is in winter time. Then if Miriam did not conceive Jesus until after John was born, so that Jesus could be a Christmas baby, that would mean that Miriam and Elizabeth could never have both been pregnant at the same time. Let us find out which is true. Were Miriam and Elizabeth never pregnant at the same time, making December 25th a distinct possibility for Yeshua? Or were Miriam and Elizabeth both pregnant at the same time, making it impossible for Jesus to have been born in December 25th? And Miriam said to the angel, Behold the handmaid of YHWH, be it unto me according to thy word. And the angel departed from her. And Miriam arose in those days, of that 6th month, and went into the hill country with haste into a city of Judah, and entered into the house of Zacharias, and saluted Elizabeth. And it came to pass, that when Elizabeth heard the salutation of Miriam, the babe, John, leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth was influenced with the Holy Spirit, and she spake with a loud voice, and said, Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, and whence is this to me that the mother of Adoni, my Lord, should come to me? Luke 1:38-42. You see that when Miriam departed from Gabriel, she said, Be it according to thy word. So, she became pregnant during that 6th month. That same month she immediately went to Elizabeth, who was 6 months pregnant with John. Elizabeth said, Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, then said that the mother of her master Yeshua had come to her. The fruit of Miriam's womb was with her when she arrived at Elizabeth's house, and she was already called Yeshua's mother, for he already was within Miriam's womb. They were therefore pregnant at the same time, and that makes a December birth for Yeshua impossibility, unless Yeshua was 3 or 4 months premature. Now that I have established that Miriam and Elizabeth were pregnant at the same time without the risk of a doubt, how do we know then that Miriam actually conceived in that 6th month? Let us consult the passage. And Miriam abode with her, Elizabeth, about 3 months, and returned to her house. Now Elizabeth's full time came that she should be delivered, and she brought forth a son. Luke 1:56-57. Miriam started staying with Elizabeth, who was 6 months pregnant, with enough time for her to carry John to a full term 9 months, before John was born. If Miriam had waited a month or two after Gabriel departed, before she became pregnant, and went to Elizabeth's house, it would have been the 7th or 8th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy. Miriam could not have stayed with her for 3 months, and John still not be born until Miriam went back home. As Elizabeth was 9 months pregnant with John before her time came to be delivered, we know, counting back 3 months would have made Elizabeth in her 6th month with John. We also know that when Miriam arrived at Elizabeth's house, she was already conceived with Yeshua. It was this very same 6th month when the angel appeared to Miriam, telling her that she was pregnant with Yeshua, and it was at that time Elizabeth's 6th month or pregnancy. And that proves, without the shadow of a doubt, Miriam conceived Jesus during the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar, the same month Gabriel appeared to her. Now let us continue. When John was born, Miriam was 3.5 months pregnant with Yeshua, who would have been born in Abib, making John, Yeshua's older cousin by about 6 months. This in itself proves it impossible for Yeshua to have been born on December 25th, making Christmas not the time of the year when Yeshua was born. This means that, when people celebrate it, they are not celebrating Yeshua's birthday, it is John the Baptist's. But since John was not as historically important as Yeshua, it can be positively said that they are celebrating a pagan feast that is based on lies and deceptions, and in the mystery of iniquity. Later, we shall come to the mystery of iniquity, for now I shall find further proof of exactly when Yeshua was born, still on the bit of information which can be found in the New Testament and which, as you shall see, is sufficient. If the Roman who had rewritten the Apostles' account had been familiar with Jewish religious customs, they would have taken the whole text of Luke about the birth out of their New Testament altogether, in order that their lies may remain forever hidden. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. Luke 2:41-42, King James Version. In the Kingdom Interlinear Translation, the original Greek verse 42 says, "And when he came to be of years 12, going up according to the custom of the festival." You see that Yeshua was not simply 12 years old, as the KJV states, when they went to keep the Passover. But he came to be of years 12, as they were going up to the feast. That signifies that he reached his 12 years during the time of the Passover. If we translate it properly, and when Yeshua became 12 years old, they were going up to the festival, or as they went traveling up for the festival, Yeshua became 12 years old. This is in harmony with what we have already told you. If Yeshua became 12 while they were journeying from the Galilee to Jerusalem, or as they entered Jerusalem for Passover, it means that his birthday was in the month when Passover comes, the month of Abib. This is 9 months from the time Gabriel appeared to Miriam, in the 6th month. That means that Yeshua's birthday was a little before the Passover day, for he became 12 as they journeyed, or as they entered Jerusalem. And they had to get there a little ahead of time to get ready for the feast. Let us see what the law of Moses says of Passover. In the 14th day of the 1st month at even is YHWH's Passover. This is the month that Yahweh told Moses would be the beginning of months when Israel was to have the death angel pass over their homes in Egypt. So Yeshua's birthday was a little before the 14th day, but still during the same month, the month of Abib. That is why Paul called Yeshua the Passover lamb. For even Messiah, Yeshua, our Passover is sacrificed for us. 1 Corinthians 5:7. Yeshua has to fulfill the role of Passover lamb. To be called that means he should be proved to have been born 10 days before Passover. Many times Yeshua is called the Lamb of Elohim which washes away the sins of man. Now let us find out when the Passover lamb is born, to see if Jesus fulfilled it and is rightfully called so. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of the month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. Exodus 12:3. You shall notice that the Passover lamb was taken on the 10th day of the month, a little before the Passover day, which is the 14th. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. This verse says that the lamb must be exactly 1 year old, taken up and set aside on the 10th day of the month, and it was to be kept for the Passover on the 14th. The 10th day is mentioned for a reason. Passover came on the 14th, and that is when the lamb was sacrificed. The 10th day is when Yahweh said he wanted a 1-year-old lamb set aside for the 14th. The lamb had to be exactly 1 year old on the 10th. Therefore each year, on the 10th of Abib, all the Passover lambs of 1 year old that were born the year before on the 10th of Abib were set aside for Passover. Also, those mothers that were ewing had to be watched on the 10th of Abib, because every lamb born on that 10th day would be specially and exclusively kept track of, as Passover lambs for the following year, when the next 10th of Abib came, as lambs 1 year old were needed again for the next Passover. This was a strict law that had to be observed, as no other lambs were suitable. So, if Yeshua fulfilled this, he would have been born on the 10th of Abib, at the same time as the little Passover lambs. Now did he fulfill it? That is when I send you back again to that story surrounding the birth of Yeshua, and which the unsuspecting Romans so thankfully for us, left intact in the book of Luke. And she, Miriam, brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for him in the inn. Luke 2:7. Remember YHWH's days start and end at sundown. So from the time the sun went down, ending the 9th of Abib, to the next day at sundown ending the 10th of Abib, the shepherds had to watch flocks to keep track of all the lambs born that night and daylight portion of the 10th of Abib, so they would know which lambs were to be used for Passover for the next year. Luke said, and there were in the same countryside shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock at night. Luke 2:8. These shepherds were out all that night for one purpose only, to watch on this 10th day of Abib, which of their flocks were ewing, for their lambs were to be used the following year. Notice that the angel, really one of Elionan, said to those shepherds, "For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Saviour, which is Messiah the ruler." Verse 11. This very same day, in which the shepherds were watching for the next year's Passover lambs, on the 10th day Abib Yeshua, was born. This is the evidence that Yeshua, or Jesus for you, was indeed the human Passover lamb, that he turned 12 years old just as he entered Jerusalem for Passover, showing that his birthday was on the 10th, just a few days before Passover, which comes on the 14th day. May I add that Abib, the first month that year, fell in April of the Roman year. Yeshua was not on December the 25th or even near it. Christmas is not biblical, it is based on lies and deception, and our leader does not want his people to keep it. But Yeshua recommended his followers to keep his Passover, which is, the Passover that he himself kept, or the Passover of his ancestors, the Jewish Passover. But he told them to remember him when eating and drinking during that time, because like a Passover lamb, he too was allowing himself to be killed as a sacrifice to his beliefs. You see that we prefer to call Yeshua by his Jewish name, but we use the name of Jesus between parentheses from time to time here to facilitate what we wanted to say. From now on, there is no longer a reason for any true followers of Yeshua to continue practicing Christmas idolatry. You know the truth. So, in place of the Messianic Judaism that Yeshua expected all of his future worldwide followers to practice, the Romans created Christianity, a pagan religion. The Papal Empire was, and is still alive in the Roman Catholic Church, which is ruled by the office of the popes, the old religion of Babel. Who opposeth and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worshipped, so that he as Elohim sitteth in the temple of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. This prediction, which is also for the leader of the renegades who shall be on earth, makes allusion to the church that was created by the Romans, and is illustrated till this day by the popes. At that time there was only one power that ever set itself up as Elohim on earth after the days of Yeshua's apostles, and that power was the popes of the Roman Catholic Church, beginning with Constantine. He took on himself the title of Pope and changed the real Roman Empire. Then he enforced Christianity upon the Roman people, making it, as we have already said, the Roman state religion. And Constantine forced on the Romans all the days of sun worship, Sunday, Easter, Christmas. etc. Then he forced everything that was Jewish or had anything to do with Judaism out of the teachings of Yeshua's apostles. This law came from Constantine in 235 AD, which stipulated magistrates, city people and artisans at a rest on the Sunday. This was the first ever Sunday law. A fanatical supporter of Constantine, Eusebius, who had been nominated Bishop of Caesarea, wrote, "All things whatsoever that it was the duty to do on the Sabbath, the seventh day, these we have transferred to the Lord's Day, Sunday." At the Council of Laodicea in 364 AD, Canon 29 was made by the Church of Rome, which stated, "Christians shall not Judaise and be idle on Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath, but shall work on that day." So from then on, everything that was Jewish or connected in worship with Judaism, Yeshua's religion, was abolished. The Roman Catholic Church was very anti-Semitic, right from Constantine himself, because, for his plans to succeed, he wanted to do away with Yeshua's religion. This he openly said, when he proclaimed that the Christians shall not Judaise. So when Constantine became Christian Pope, he began to persecute the Jews. Christians were forbidden to associate with them. He banished the rabbis in 337 AD and made it a crime for a Jew to marry a Christian woman. At the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, the question of Easter was discussed, and Passover was simply changed to Easter. Constantine said, "And first of all, it appeared an unworthy thing, that in the celebration of this holy feast we should follow the practices of the Jews, who have impiously defiled their hands with enormous sin, and are therefore deservedly afflicted with blindness of soul. Let us have nothing in common with the detestable Jewish crow, for we have received from our Saviour a different way. Beloved brethren, let us with one consent adopt this course, and withdraw ourselves from all participation in their baseness. It was needful that this matter should be rectified, so that we might have nothing in common with that nation of parricides, who slew their Saviour. That all should unite in desiring that which sound reason appears to demand, and in avoiding all participation in the perjured conduct of the Jews. In fine, that I may express in a few words as possible, it has been determined by the common judgments of all that the most holy feast of Easter should be kept on one and the same day. Yeshua the Jewish rabbi was not born of a virgin birth, unlike Jesus the Christian Christ. But do the Christians know that crucifixion was not an event unique to Jesus? Many others died exactly the same way in other mythologies. Mithras was crucified in Persia, Tammuz in Babylon, Thules and Orontes in Egypt, Odin in Scandinavia, and Esus in Britain's Druidic tradition. All these crucifixions happened thousands and hundreds of years before Christianity surfaced. There were also many virgin births and many immaculate conceptions in other pagan religions. Does humanity know that the Christian Mary was not the only virgin that had an immaculate conception? In Mexico, Quetzalcoatl, the sun god's mother, conceived him as a virgin. The strictly celibate widow Semiramis conceived Tammuz after Nimrod's death without a male partner. Hercules, the only begotten son of Zeus, father of Greek gods, was born in a virgin birth to Alcmena. In Egypt, the goddess Isis conceived Horus as a virgin. Ancient Egyptian inscriptions can still be found which say, "Immaculate is Our Lady Isis." The same title, as the whole world knows, is now being given Mary, the mother of the Roman Catholic and Christians Jesus. Did you know that Mary, who is now being worshipped as a goddess, is a variety of the same entity in ancient mothers and goddess stories and traditions? For example, Maya was the mother of Buddha. Moya was the mother of Agni. Mira was the mother of Bacchus. Mariana was the mother of Krishna. Mira was the mother of Adonis, etc. Hercules had abolished sacrifice in his time, and was called the Good Shepherd and the Prince of Peace. He descended in the realms of Pluto, then later ascended to his father Zeus. So normally, Christianity abolished temple sacrifice in the name of their Jesus, who, it was also decided by the Romans, will be known in the future to have ascended to his father God, naturally. In ancient Persia, sun worship was much spread, and all worship took place on Sundays. We also have Zarathustra. He was born on the 25th of December, in a manger in a cave, and was world's savior, from the sun, many centuries before the Christian Christ. So, after Christianity took over the religion of the Messianic believers, as Yeshua's followers were also known, which was a Jewish religion, and which combined the belief in, and the practice of Yeshua's teachings as the bringer of the Messiah's spirit through the mysteries, with the old Pharisaic Orthodox ones. Constantine declared that he intended to wipe out everything Jewish, and everything Yeshua himself stood for. That way, Christianity would have nothing in common with the nation of the Jews, or in other words with the true religion of YHWH, which was also the true religion of Yeshua himself. And they used the name of Yeshua, a Jewish prophet Messiah, to reach their aims, saying at the same time, "Let us have nothing with the detestable Jewish crowd." So Easter was fixed on the Sunday following the Jewish Passover, contrary to Yeshua's instructions. They changed the Sabbath to Sunday, and Passover to Easter, a festival that was kept by the pagans in the spring in honor of Baal, and not only that, polytheism was definitely declared. The popes became known as the Holy See, God on earth, and they are still known as, and called Holiness or Holy Father even now. But that was nothing new. They simply kept and perpetuated the tradition of all Roman emperors who were declared gods and divine beings. The Pope of today is still set as a deity on earth, and considers himself that. During that Council of Nicaea where Constantine made the speech that was partly repeated here, it was also decided that their Jesus could not remain just a man, he had to be made a god. Surely the status of Yeshua as a simple Jewish rabbi and prophet could not fit, if his story had to be integrated into the old polytheist doctrine of Trinity. So this had to be changed. The bishops who sat in the panel at the council voted for the Hellenized Jesus as the third person of their Holy Trinity of God in the newly renamed Old Babylonian religion, by the raising of hands. So they voted. Thus the Jewish rabbi and prophet Yeshua bar Joseph became Jesus. He was elected to become a god to be worshipped, by the raising of hands, at a meeting staged by a group of sun worshippers. After this meeting, Constantine issued the strict edict that said, anyone, Christian or not, who continued to believe or claim that Jesus was a simple man, or who accepted or followed doctrines that did not conform to the new Council of Nicaea decisions, was to be considered a heretic and to be exiled from the empire or put to death. Those who were true followers of Yeshua's original doctrine were persecuted, stoned, arrested, and killed, and all their manuscripts were seized and destroyed. Now we used the writings and events that took place on earth to present today's message because it was necessary. However, criticizing any existing religious denomination was not our aim here. We want Yeshua's religion to be revived and practiced as he intended it to be. We needed to make our point using the events that humanity are, or think they are familiar with. Only this time, we told you the truth. Therefore, Christianity is not and must not be your enemies. We have now finished with today's message, Desiree. We shall leave you early today for reasons you shall know soon. We have come to the end of the messages that we had to record into your brain. Come back tomorrow and we shall meet. Then you will have the opportunity to ask us as many questions as you like, because for the whole week that follows from tomorrow, we shall give you the theoretical teachings that your grandfather promised that we shall give you, and which we promised him that we would do. What we have until now recorded in your brain shall remain in it until you decide to write it down. We therefore urge you to write it in book form and have it published. This of course is not an order, you are free to write and become our messenger, or to refuse to do so. We will show you how to contact us in case you do not wish to become our messenger. Until you do so, we shall assume that you will write the book and we shall wait as long as necessary for you to begin your work. Do not worry about being poor, or not being eloquent or anything else, because we will not abandon you. Also, as we have told you, there are many people, among them some very rich and powerful personalities, who are part of your transmigration group, and who are now on earth, who will help you. The distant memories of all of them shall be activated as soon as they begin to read this message, and even before they had finished to read it, they would have decided and resolved to contact you, offering you help and support. So go with our blessing, because you shall never be alone. Those who are to contact you shall count in hundreds of thousands very quickly, later to millions. Every person that is supposed to contact you shall let themselves be known to you in due time. We also advise you never to make a nuisance of yourselves, neither you nor your followers. Never go knocking on people's doors in order to tell them about yourselves. Just content yourselves to make this message known to as many people as possible. Even if you find yourselves in public places where people are free to express themselves, content yourselves with giving them information about how to contact you. Desiree, we are not sending you to start a new religion based on people from out of space, even though we advise you to open people's eyes and minds to the fact that humanity is not the only intelligent humanoid race existing in this universe, and awaken them to the fact that Earth is regularly visited by other highly advanced humanoid beings, who happen to be the creators of the human race. Instead, we are sending you to go and revive the Jewish Essene faith of Yeshua, which unfortunately is not being followed by Christianity, as it should be. But be careful about your Essene legacy. Do not be too hasty in entrusting your knowledge of the mysteries to anyone who comes to you. At the same time, test those who wish to become initiated into them. And if you judge those people as serious, dedicated, sincere and worthy, do not refuse to teach or to help them realize their divinities. Be just as dedicated and faithful at instructing and helping them as your grandfather has been, and as we too are going to be to you during the week that comes. As for those of you who will read this message, listen to your heart. If it stirs some remote memory, some need to meet and know this messenger of ours, please, do not hesitate to write to her and be ready to help her and participate in this enormous task that we have just given her. Memories implanted in you should strongly tell you that this message is personally addressed to you. Do not ignore their prompting. Do you own a piece of land that lay unused? Then do contact this, our messenger, and offer it for the building of premises necessary for her to carry out her work. Do you have knowledge of constructing buildings? Then get in touch with her and offer your services. Do you have building materials but do not have the time to do the work yourself? Then offer them to her, for another builder will come forward to do the work. A lot of you came to Earth, having promised to do just that, and for that you chose to be rich in this lifetime. We have already helped many of you obtain those riches and everything necessary for this big enterprise to be carried out. Therefore, do not hesitate, and begin offering the help you promised to offer her, here on Earth. Do you have a large house, a barn or a hangar in which your fellow Essenes could meet in comfort? Then contact her and offer your help. Do you believe you are one who is ready for the mysteries? Do you believe that you are on Earth for a specific purpose? Are you dissatisfied with your life despite your successes, riches and power, and feel that there is something lacking spiritually to make you feel complete? Do you have a feeling of not fitting anywhere, of not belonging? Have you always wondered why you were born and what the purpose of existence of man on Earth truly is? Has this message brought you the last piece of a puzzle that has eluded you all your life? Then contact our messenger and begin to piece the picture together. Have you amassed a large fortune and have no heirs? Have you always been known as an avaricious person, hoarding up large amounts but never spending them, nor knowing what to do with them? Well, your time has now come to put those fortunes to good use. Before you go and buy yourself a ring, a watch or a toy worth £1 million, stop and put that money at the disposition of the writer of the message we give here. Simply listen to your heart and contact Desiree, our female messenger. This message does not by any means demean any other faiths now existing on Earth. All are children of God, and all people are guided by God in the way that they can best understand Him. But, to those who feel that there is something missing from what they have already learnt, is this message directed. We also emphasize that to be an Essene is to embrace a whole way of life. Therefore, we forewarn you that, of the many that shall follow this, our messenger, not too many would want to become acquainted with the mysteries. That is perfectly acceptable. The way of the mysteries is the way to divinity and to heaven. To access to it is a tough battle, and only the strongest and most persevering ones shall grab hold of it. Yeshua had said it before, and we repeat it now. It is open to all, and it is not impossible. With our messenger, an opportunity presents itself here, do seize it. Some among you who have recognized yourselves through this book as being part of our messenger's transmigration group, and may have for a long time sought to realize their divinities through other lineages and methods, and have come out partially satisfied. Those shall be immediately prompted to contact our messenger in order to complete their divine realization. Some of you reading this message when it shall be published would already have met the young man from France, maybe even become his followers. But they would immediately recognize themselves by the fact that no matter what they had been taught by him, they had always felt that what he told them was not right, and that he was a liar. Maybe you have distanced yourself from him and are now in a state of confusion. But do not despair. It was supposed to happen that way to many others like you. Your memories were awakened right on time, and you are one of those who shall help our messenger. Contact her immediately, do not waste any more time. Are you, like many other thousands, a poor victim of that man's perverted teachings and do not know whom to turn to? Do not despair, there are thousands like you. A sign of that is that many of his followers will go mad and suffer diverse mental illnesses. Therefore, write to this messenger of ours, and seek her help. It is for people like yourself that we are sending her. She would advise you with love and care. You who are reading this message, if you believe that there could be the remotest truth in what we have just said here, if you believe that there is life on other planets despite what all of Earth's governments say to the contrary, this message is addressed to you. Use some of the spare time that you have on your hands, and use your money, your expertise and your intelligence to help our messenger spread our message. She cannot do this enormous work alone, she needs your help. Do you have a story to tell her that could be similar to what we have said here? Contact her and join forces with her, for this message is for all of the human race. It is about us, your creators, about your origins, about who you all are. And as such, the teachings of the man in France should not be allowed to corrupt the minds of those seeking for the truth about their creation, and the reason why they are on Earth. Désiré, feel free to do all you wish to do, and live a normal life until this message becomes properly public and widely known. After that, you shall abandon any other occupations, hobbies and activities you might be involved in, and shall dedicate all your time, efforts and energies to the promulgation of this message. That shall be your sole occupation until you choose to leave your body. Do not worry about how and where you shall live, or what you shall eat and wear. Those who, from the time when they were born, were destined to contact you will help you. You shall endeavor to have a contact center, or a representative in every country where the young man of France shall have his, and you shall make this message available to all his followers. Do not also forget to help all those who are willing to realize themselves divinely. Be good to them as we have been to you. Give as freely as we have given and as you have received, following only the conditions as they were prescribed to your ancestors before you. We shall meet you tomorrow. After I finished listening to this part of the message, I opened the Bible and read the story of Jonah, and compared it to Ezekiel's. Their reactions to their encounters with Elianin were indeed similar, and a lot like the way I had been feeling sometimes in the last week, particularly where the illnesses were concerned.